Welcome, everybody, and good afternoon. My name is Guatlian Kramer, and I am a member of the hosting organization that is Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Newark, Delaware. I will be the MC for the first half of the program, and Erica Gutierrez, who is from the Safe Communities Coalition of Delaware, will be hosting the second half as well as moderating the question and answer session. So today we will be hearing from 3 of our local government officials and the 6 panelists. And the panelists will be touching on a wide range of topics from Asian American victimization by Dr. Sun to deeply personal stories. So I can guarantee that you all will be in for a treat. Also note that if you all have been paying attention, that we had another speaker, panelist that is, who has, was not able to join us. And so Yunfei Liu, one of the planning team members, actually has stepped up to replace him, and Yunfei will be speaking about winning one for our children. So now, without further ado, let's have our opening video. A capsule history of the Asian American experience in this country from the late 1500s to present. So here we are.
The Filipino-American experience begins on October 18, 1587, when a landing party from the Manila galleon ascends ashore and 8 Luzones Indios, meaning Filipinos.
Wagons were tilted up on one end. That was used as an area to drop the rope and lynch the person.
The court ruled that American-born children of Chinese immigrants were entitled to citizenship under the 14th Amendment.
I don't quite know the standard of respectability that you demand in your boarding house.
In his brief, Ozawa argued that his skin was as white as any so-called Caucasian, if not whiter.
The President of the United States, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, ordered all Japanese Americans on the west coast of America to be summarily rounded up with no charges, with no trial, with no due process.
I got such children, I leaned up against them. I said, Papa, someday I'm going to be an Olympic champ.
Republican Hiram Fong of Chinese descent becomes one of Hawaii's 2 United States senators.
Empty your mind, be formless, shapeless.
Good luck in Chicago, shorty.
But we must recognize that the internment of Japanese Americans was just that, a mistake. The legislation that I am about to sign provides for a restitution payment to each of the 60,000 survivors.
Michael Chang shocked the world when he won the French Open at age 17.
Surprised me was the complete shutout of the Joy Luck Club, which when it was released last September was considered a shoo-in for a Best Picture.
I wish you all the best of luck in Beijing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you.
America doesn't handle Asian American identity with the care and concern and I think fear that they handle other identities of color in America. So writers think it's okay to have a headline on ESPN saying chink in the armor, or 2 inches of pain, or constantly saying, oh, he's deceptively quick. We didn't expect this, because they underestimate us all the time. But when you speed things up to 2016 and you see the way America fears Muslims, the way America fears the black community, and the way that America goes into these communities and literally hunts individuals down. As a Taiwanese Chinese American, you say to yourself, maybe it's better we aren't feared, and maybe it's better we're forgotten, and maybe it's better we're underestimated.
Well, wasn't that an amazing short but very powerful video? And this is really why we are here today, to really break that silence. And with that, I'd like to invite Lieutenant Governor Bethany Long to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow, that video was quite compelling and moving, and shares with us a lot of the progress that needs to continue to occur. I am just delighted to join you for a couple moments today to share with you my sincere commitment. All of us who are here in public service are here to listen, to support, roll up our sleeves, and to act, to really be with the Asian American Pacific Islander community. And thank you to all the incredible sponsors and supporters who are here today. And again, to our Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Newark, I say thank you for hosting Peace Week. It is such an important time. Peace Week is a significance. Today I was in Sussex planting a peace pole. And one of the themes on the pole in 12 languages, peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of creative solutions. And I know that is the conversation today. The community has been attacked, has not been fully supported. Myself and others stand ready, committed to be here to support you in the community, whether from issues of equity and workforce and housing, to recognize and celebrate many of you. As I look to the speakers who follow, I see my colleague at the University of Delaware, Dr. Sun, and others who've worked so incredibly hard at all levels and professions. And so we respect you. We want to hear you, listen, and commit to you 100% of what we can provide. And today, I want to remind our members of the AAPI community that we are so much stronger and better as a broad community working collectively. And so please, to the young adults who are perhaps listening in for the first time, your peers, your mentors, they know your voice matters, your contributions matter. I feel in my heart after I watch the video, the pain and the suffering, but I also recognize the triumph and the capacity and the ability that we can do. In my profession as a nurse, we don't see background. We don't see zip code. It is about making sure people have equity. So as your Lieutenant Governor, I know many of you have worked with my office in the past, making sure that we have resources accessible to the community. But today we're to hear and to listen, to make our community stronger and healthier, thanks to all of your incredible efforts. So today I wanted to be very brief, because I am here to listen, and I want to roll my sleeves up and make 100% my commitment to you, and to say thank you as we stand against violence, as we stand against atrocities and racism, but together collectively we bond. And again, to whom much is given, much is expected in this faith-filled community during Peace Week. God bless. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. That was really very generous, nice speech. Well, as you all know, she is widely recognized as a leader who uses a skill to build consensus and help find common sense solutions to issues and problems facing our local families and communities. So I'm sure that she will be helping us attain some of our goals today. So with that, thank you, Lieutenant Governor, and I'd like to introduce Senator Hansen. Now, before you begin, Senator Hansen, you represent the 10th Senate District, and that includes portions of Newark, Glasgow, Bear, Middletown, and communities along the west side of the southern Newcastle County. Now, many of you may be aware that she formed the 10th Senate District Multicultural Committee to help foster understanding among different cultural communities, and she's also a prolific legislator. So that's how I got to know Senator Hansen through her work in the Multicultural Committee of Coalition. So, Senator Hansen, it's your turn.
Thank you. Thank you very much for asking me to speak today. And I want to echo the comments of our Lieutenant Governor about the honor of being here and the commitment to work with your community. According to the census in 2010, there were approximately 31,200 people in Delaware that self-identified as Asian. Looking closer into that number, over 40% or over 12,000 were identified as Indian American, followed by 7,000 identifying as being of Chinese descent, and Delaware's third largest Asian population, Filipino, encompassing 3,300 people. But we know that there were many people here in Delaware with roots in Korea, Japan, Vietnam, the Pacific Islands, and many other East and Southeast Asian countries. I'm sure that an analysis of the census numbers from 2020 will give us additional valuable insight. But the distinction between the cultures of those communities eludes many of us that do not have regular and frequent contact with a variety of people from these cultures. And that's a shame, because these distinct cultures form an important and beautiful part of Delaware's tapestry of people. It's also a shame because when you aren't aware of the distinctions, the tendency is to lump everyone into the same category, making it even harder to appreciate the value of diversity and the contributions of the various groups. When I was first running for office back in 2017, I knocked on many doors, and it was surprising to me how diverse my district is. As a result, as Guatlian mentioned, I formed the 10th District Multicultural Coalition, whose purpose was to build bridges between communities while respecting and celebrating our differences. In 2019, also with the help of Guatlian and Yanfei Lu, we held our first multicultural festival in Middletown. Just before COVID-19 shut down our ability to meet in person, we were beginning to make plans to examine the different distinctions between various cultures within larger racial and ethnic groups. And in that case, we were starting with the Hispanic culture and had coalitions that were going to be representing Puerto Rico, Mexico, and other Central American countries. And they were preparing to explain the differences to our group, bringing in food, clothing, talking about the history and the different lifestyles within their culture. Some things just don't present well virtually, and those presentations were sidelined. But we have once again begun discussions about how to move forward with that concept. And I bring this up because it seems very similar to the type of examination and celebration of the various East and Southeastern Asian and Pacific Island cultures that needs to occur today. This is important because once someone begins the journey to understand and celebrate another culture, it replaces the ability to hate. Knowledge and understanding replaces ignorance and suspicion. Terrible things have happened to the Asian American community throughout the history of this country. And events in the recent past have once again shown a light on the ignorance and in some cases hate that exists. But today in Delaware, you are at an important point in time. You have the spotlight, and the spotlight doesn't come along often. You have to ask yourself, what are you going to do with this opportunity? What is the end point that you want to see? Will it be highlighting the business and professional programs of the Delaware Chinese American Association? Or maybe the beauty and the excitement of the Delaware Korean Festival? Or perhaps the humanitarian work of the Philippine Association of Delaware? Or about all the educational opportunities for the children at the Chinese School of Delaware, the CACC Montessori School, or the Chunhui Chinese School, or maybe all of the above and much more. This past March, after the horrific shootings in the Atlanta area spa that claimed 8 innocent lives, a vigil was held at Grace United Methodist Church in Wilmington for the victims of the shooting, 6 of whom were Asian women, as well as all the victims of anti-Asian violence. Reporting on the event, the News Journal quoted Vivian Louie, director of the Asian American Studies Center and Program at Hunter College in New York. Ms. Louie stressed the importance of education in order to help curb anti-Asian violence and discrimination in the future. To that end, she said, "This is a moment of dialogue, learning, and coalition building. That's how change happens." I agree, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to this honorable group today.
Wow, you just beat us to the belt, Ed Hansen. We're going to ring it on you, but thank you for your very, yet some really specific things to suggest, and I think we will take you up on it later on. So, okay, great. So, before we start, Dr. Sun, Ivan Sun, holds the position of professor in the Department of Sociology and Criminal Justice and is a member of the Faculty of the Asian Studies at University of Delaware. His research interests include police attitudes and behavior, public perception of legal authorities, and crime and justice in Asian societies. Today, he will be talking to us about Asian American victimization. Dr. Sun?
Thank you, Guangliang. Thanks so much for having me in this wonderful event. And thank you for all who come into this event. I know you're busy watching Eagles game, I'm watching the Yankees game. So there are lots of stuff going on, but I'm so happy to be here. Over the next about 10 minutes, 8 to 10 minutes, I would like to share some information on Asian American victimization. This is a huge topic. I won't be able to tell you everything. You already watched a powerful video clip that covering a long history over 200 years. There are some painful historical events for sure. So what I would like to give you a general understanding of what we know, in most cases, what we do not know, okay, about Asian American victimization. There are some good work. There are some good work that has touched on the topic on Asian American victimization. I cannot help but, particularly mention one of the books written by my UD colleague, Jim Feiter, a few years back, driving out. This is the one that systematically document, how Asian American, Chinese American, in particularly in the 18th centuries, early 20th centuries in California and the northwest region of the country that involve a lot of brutal treatments of Chinese immigrants, ethnic cleansing, race-based violence. In some cases, state violence involved collaboration between local residents, public officials, including police officers. So there is a long history in terms of race and victimization. As a criminologist, and the community literature has touched on this. Okay, we have done extensively investigation looking at the impact of race of victimization. If you look at national-wide surveys, particularly such as NCVS, which is National Crime Victimization Survey, you will find that Asian American are relatively low in terms of victimization rate. But we have to be very, very careful about this, all right? So if you look at those two statistics I list on here, between 2008 and 2019 at New York City, this is a pre-pandemic, all right? So Asian American is the only group see their victimization population share increased across all type of crimes, right? And during the pandemic, one of the most important statistics that have been shared widely is the number of hate crimes against or targeting Asian American raised more than 100%, 145% to be exact, in 6 largest cities. So when we talk about the general pattern of victimization among Asian Americans, we got to be very careful, all right? So we cannot just look in the nationwide trends or statistics without looking at some regional differences, even some differences in different types of crimes, all right? So I, along with 2 other college professors, I did an extensive search on all literatures. We know those historical events. We want to know over the past 30 years, 3 decades, for instance, from 1990 and on, what are the empirical evidence? I'm a social scientist. I relied on, like our lieutenant governor, we do empirical-based research. So I relied on information, evidence from the scholarly work, right? Systematic studies, scientific studies of this topic. So we do not find a lot, okay? We do not find a lot. That's why I say that most of the time we do not know more than we do know, all right? But 3 areas does stand out, okay? Do stand out. Those areas, I will quickly go over this. One involves the adolescent student victimization, all right? We find that, sadly, Asian American students are more likely than other racial groups to be victimized by their peers, okay? Either studies conducted in Oakland, California, study conducted nationwide from 1992 to 2014. This is nationwide hate crime statistics for over 20 years. Then you see that, Asian American kids, this happened in school, those are their kids. Other type of possible, victimization type, including racial discrimination and the verbal harassment. So our kids, Asian American kids, are actually, subject to very different types of victimization in this country, all right? So most troublesome to me for criminology is that normally school performance, school achievement is a shielding, is a preventing factors of victimization. That including extracurricular activities. But that's not the case for Asian American students who have higher academic achievement actually experiences more frequently of victimization compared to their Latino and the white youth, right? So similarly, for those Asian American kids who participated in extracurricular sports, for instance, were actually more likely to experience school-based victimization, okay? So this is very alarming compared to their white counterpart. So this is very alarming, right? So we send our kids to school, encourage them to perform well, to participate in all kinds of activities, but they are actually, those kind of performance and activity actually expose them to greater risk. Okay, so this is very alarming. So the second area is IPV, intimate partner violence, domestic violence in general. We find that Asian women, in particular, among Japanese, there's studies showing that in Japanese American families, Korean immigrants families, their women have a very high, those are lifetime rates, okay? So it's very high, 80%, 60%, very, very high. Homicide victims like to be women among Asian population, all right? So this is another area that also touched on not just the Asian women, but also Asian young adults and the college students. So there are evidence, including this very recent 2021 study showing, more than half Asian American female college students experience some type of victimization in an intimate relationship. So a third area, perhaps is most important concerning a lot of government officials, is hate crime. Okay, it has been officially defined by federal governments more than 20 years now, right? So we all know that most likely to happen when the country experiences some kind of economic, political, and social challenge, right? So sharp increase that we have known that during the pandemic, over the past about a year and a half, all right? So if it's not really a surprise if you have the president systematically calling the virus as the cold flu or Chinese virus, that is stirring up a lot of hatred toward sentiment toward the Asian Americans, right? So one major findings I want to emphasize here is compared to Blacks and Latinos, hate crimes against Asians are more likely to be committed by non-white perpetrators. So this indicates a heightened racial tensions among the minorities, right? So this is something a little bit different between Asian and Black and Latinos. So there are a number of reasons that we have to research, to do more research, right? So due to the time limit, I'm not going to go through that. There are many areas that we can do in terms of more future research on Asian American victimizations. This is an article I was talking about. We work on this. This is published on the Criminologist, which is the newsletter of American Society of Criminology. You can have more information on what I just talked about briefly over the past about 10 minutes. There's a book I written about a couple of years ago called Race, Migration, and the Social Control that also touch on victimization of Asian American. My time is up. Thank you for your listening.
Wow, what a lot of stuff. I mean, yeah. Okay, we could listen for another hour, I think, but I'm going to move on now to Shu Qian Liang. And Shu Qian is going to be talking to us about her informal survey of Delaware Asian American experience. Now, Shu Qian was born in Taiwan, but she's been a Delaware resident for over 25 years. She currently works in international flavors and fragrances, and she is an active community volunteer. And as part of that, she took it upon herself to conduct interviews with the people and business owners of East and Southeast Asian descent. So right now, she'll be sharing their voices and thoughts with us. Go ahead, Shu Qian.
Is that good now?
Yeah.
Is that okay now?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, good. So first, I want to thank Guolian for a nice introduction and for giving me this opportunity to share an informal survey of Delaware Asian American experience with racial bias. A couple of months ago, I was waiting for my order at a sandwich restaurant. And so the owner and I started chatting. I asked her how she has been doing, especially during the pandemic. She told me about an incident a couple of weeks back. So it was on a sunny Saturday, and she and her 6th grade daughter decided to go to Glasgow Park for a picnic. After they sat down, shortly after that, 2 families nearby quickly got up, packed their stuff, and moved far away. And then later on, one of the boys came back and wanted to play on the swing, the slides, only got dragged back and yelled at by his mom. So the shop owner told me that she felt hurt and felt insulted. Worst of all, her daughter, she felt bad for her daughter who had to witness the whole thing, and there was nothing she could help her to protect her. So as I was walking out of the shop, that's when I decided I'm going to talk to more people in my community and hear their experience, and hopefully one day I can share their stories. So before I get to my survey results, just want to share some of the statistics at the national level. So the Stop AAPI Coalition has been collecting data since March 2020. And the last report it came out shows that there have been more than 9,000 racial incidents between last year, March, and past June. And you could look at previous quarter, it was 6,600 cases. So the number continues to climb. And all of those, women make up most of the victims. It's about 63%. And Chinese have reported more hate incidents than any other racial groups, 43%. If we look at the FBI, Uniform Crime Reporting Database, you can see a huge jump in just 2020 alone for anti-Asian hate crimes. And it's precisely this trend, this surge in hate crimes or hate or racial incidents that make the Asian American community, AAPI community, concerned and alarmed. So the data collected from the survey is from April through September. There are a total of 36 participants. 14 are small business owners, staff, 16 professionals. Most of them are Chinese, a few Koreans, Vietnamese, Indians, and Filipino. I asked them what type of racism they have experienced, if any, and how do they feel, or how did they feel at the time, and what do they think we can do about it. My census number is slightly different, but from what was reported earlier. But anyway, in terms of the Asian American populations, we have roughly about 37,000 people. So 36 is a very tiny fraction. But I believe the results are still meaningful. And the stories, the feelings are real. So here are the responses. 10 out of 36 people experienced racial incidents during the past 2 years, and 15 reported none. And all the racial incidents are either microaggressions, racial slurs, or shunning avoidance. A few of them mentioned to me that they were yelled, "Go back to your country," "Back off," or people act like they were afraid of them. And one individual told me that she and her family were yelled China virus when they were on the tennis court. So you can see from all these responses, they are all kind of mostly COVID related. So echo what Dr. Sun said earlier, it's very disappointing. Some of our public officials have been using very divisive and inflammatory remarks to describe the coronavirus pandemic. So which creates an environment for people to start maybe act irrationally. And that's really not good for us as a society at all. So the emotions vary quite widely. from feeling numb, resigned, thinking that nothing is going to change. It's going to be the way like this forever, to feeling confused, berated, hurt, or angry. So some of the comments from the participants, essentially everyone point out that we need to work closely together and listen to each other and be more understanding, because we do have very diverse backgrounds, not just within the Asian American communities, AAPI communities, but also among all the other racial minority groups. And we need to let our voices be heard, participate in all kind of community activities, and increase representation in the public offices, and vote, and vote. So 2 things which really stood out when I was talking to people, or 2 comments. One person said that racism exists between the minority groups. The other person, who was at the receiving end of a racial slur, lamented that African Americans attack Asian Americans too. These comments remind me that how complicated racism issue is. And in particular, the second one, which I find extremely intriguing. So I looked into this topic a little bit more. Here are a couple of studies. 2 of them look into the anti-Asian hate incidents published over 2019 to 2021. The authors reviewed thousands of public records. And from local communities, from law enforcement databases, or from surveys. And they found that most of the offenders are white, and about 10% also are Black. And one author noted that the media and crime news outlets often or have the tendency to over-report or over-represent Black suspects, creating an impression that they are largely responsible for anti-Asian incidents. I think it's important to point this out because the way we gather, consume information, and the speed information spreads on social medias makes us very vulnerable to misinformation. And consequently, we would develop bias that we don't even recognize. And that makes that become very detrimental to our efforts to make progress to fight against stereotype and racism. So here are my takeaways from this informal survey. First, I want to point out that many survey correspondents, they tell me that they believe Delaware is a good place to live or work. Otherwise, I won't be here, living here. And then on the racial incident types, we talk about mainly microaggressions, racial slurs, or shunning. And I cover some of the ideas people share about how we can address the racial bias, racism issue. And lastly, I want to point out that, as we probably all recognize, solidarity among minority groups can be very fragile. So we need to really keep an open mind, try to be patient, understand each other, and that's the only way we can address this issue. And that's the end. I'll turn the control over back to Guoliang.
Hi, thank you. That's amazing, Shujian. that, was it 6 months of a survey, and you really, put together a very effective and meaningful presentation for what I can see. So thank you. Yeah, nothing like the voice from the people on the streets. Great to be heard. Okay, so next we move on to Zan Hong. So Zan, spelled Xan, is the CEO and founder of OnTrack, which is a technology company that empowers individuals to reach their potential and achieve their life goals. Now, in addition to being an entrepreneur, he's an avid athlete and fan of Jeremy Lin, I believe, and he's also a volunteer. He currently lives in Milltown with his wife and 8-year-old daughter, and now he'll talk to us about his struggles with the Asian American stereotype, as male stereotype, as he experiences it. So here you go.
Hey, can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
All right. So thank you so much for having me today. My presentation today is a little bit more personal and probably less scientific, but I really just wanted to share my personal experience as an Asian American male and how I really struggled with how I viewed myself, partially with how I perceived other people were viewing me. So a little bit about my background, and I'm picking certain things here because as I go through the presentation, hopefully that'll make sense. But I'm the son of two Taiwanese immigrants. I've got two sisters. I know this. I had to dig up some old school photos, as you can see here. So my sisters, I graduated from Amherst College, Yale University, Columbia University. I myself graduated from the University of Pennsylvania. In high school, I was the captain of my high school track team. I ran track on the varsity team at the University of Pennsylvania as well. It was a big event at Penn, but I was the 1998 Mr. Penn lightweight bodybuilding champion. I'm in an interracial marriage. One thing that I think is really interesting is I actually did not learn Mandarin growing up. And the specific reason why is my oldest sister, when she went to elementary school, she had been learning English from my parents. And so she had acquired an accent. And the reality is that accent probably would have gone away, but it scared my mom a little bit, where she was scared that with these accents, it was going to hold us back from opportunities in the US. And so my middle sister and myself actually ended up not learning Chinese. And then as Guat Lian said, I'm currently a tech founder in Delaware. So growing up, I wanted to kind of share what my perception of the Asian male stereotype was. I mean, that could be different from other people's, but I think it was important to kind of share my perspective. Number one is, Asians, both male and female, were smart, but at the same time, they were physically weak. Males in particular, not really attractive to females. We were unathletic, and if we were athletic, it's because we were in martial arts. And I think a really important reason why, and I think it's going to kind of play in later on in what I talk about, is a lot of this came from images I saw in the media growing up. So I kind of picked two, but I think there's really more. So one was Bruce Lee. So he was kind of cool, but at the same time, he kind of did that, what? Growing up, I always got kids saying that to me, like, hey, do you sound like that too? And the other one is Long Duck Dong, and he was in, I think it was 16 Candles. And so those, I think, are two kind of representative images of Asian males that I saw growing up. And in a lot of ways, I internalized that. And so I really made a conscious effort. If I'm being honest, I wanted to capitalize on the positives, right? That we were smart, and I wanted to build on that. But I really made a conscious effort to combat what I perceived as the negative perceptions of Asian males. And so, a big part of that effort on my part was through sports. I knew Asians weren't really kind of considered athletic growing up. So, I excelled at track. I was a sprinter. So I was really, excelling in an event that wasn't really seen as what Asians excel at. I listed that bodybuilding champion because that was really, it was really important to me from the standpoint of it really kind of was a crowning achievement in my battle against that. I played basketball a lot. Actually, today I played. I'm hurting. I'm not as young as I used to be, and not uncommon. I was the only Asian on the court. I played tennis as well. I was also a personal trainer, but I share some of these stats. When I went to college, I was about 125 pounds. I couldn't lift over 100 pounds. And I really made a conscious effort, as I was going through college, to really change that perception. And I worked hard. Actually, I feel the effects of it now from that heavy lifting. But it was really important to me. And so by the end, I actually, I did a 385 pound squat, weighing 145 pounds, and a bench 215. And I list those just because that, when you look at where I started and just how motivated it was to go against that perception. I was also actually a personal trainer after college as well. And I remember very distinctly, I went to the doctor, and at the time, I was a personal trainer, and my doctor asked me what my profession was, and I was personal training full time at the time. And he's like, "You can't be," because I was 145 pounds, and he literally made me take off my shirt to see like, how can this guy be a personal trainer? And I remember being really insulted. But it just feeds into like, here's this idea where it's just, hey, you can't be a personal trainer. You can't be this. And I hated that. And I always try and go against the grain. Part of why I'm a tech co-founder now. And this was in the video that played before, which was really powerful. And it got me, it really struck home for me. But I cannot stress enough. I actually got a little emotional just now thinking about how big of an impact Linsanity had on me. For the very first time, here's a guy, he's a Harvard grad, so he had kind of the smarts behind it, playing a sport that he had no business excelling at. And I wish I had someone like that growing up, because it really would have had a potential impact on how I viewed myself. And I think I really wanted to kind of drive this home is how the media, and I think the last presenter talked about this as well, just how media portrays this, but how the media portrays, especially people of color, has such a big impact on how they view themselves. And I personally think that that's where a big piece of where we need to look at to actually affect change, because there's been more recent movies where Asians are kind of portrayed in a different light, more males portrayed as more attractive and things like that, kind of cooler. And that makes a big difference. And so I think that's, if there's any takeaway from my session today, I really think that is mine. And so just kind of driving this home and, hopefully getting us back on a little bit of a schedule here. I have a biracial daughter. And I think I've grown, I'm older now. And I think I've realized just how much I've spent most of my life fighting against kind of the stereotypes, and maybe almost too much. And so I'm lucky enough to be in Middletown, where that has a Chinese immersion program. So it really was important for me to have my daughter in this program to maybe connect with some of the roots that I aren't as I'm not as connected with as I feel like as I should be. So and she's excelling, and so I think that was kind of a full circle end to my story. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that, and hopefully you're not going to make fun of me too much for the photos I shared. But thank you again, and thanks for having me today.
Thank you, John. That was awesome. You have a cute daughter, that's for sure.
Thank you.
And I'm glad that you're trying to reconnect her to your roots. I relate. Okay, I didn't grow up learning Mandarin either. I know nothing. So anyway, right now we are sort of at the halfway point, and what I'm going to do is turn over my MC duties to Erica. Erica, can you please introduce Ray Chen?
Hello, everyone. Honored to be here with all of you. I am assisting Wetline and the team here, introducing our speakers for this important conversation that we are having and look forward to keep having for everyone to come together. Please allow me to, my name is Erika Gutierrez again, pleased to hear. And I am going to present our next beautiful speaker, a person that has an incredible bravery and delicacy. And I welcome you to receive him with a heart and love, because what he's about to share with us, she's about to share with us is important and vital. Ru Chen was born in China and raised in America for much of his life. He currently works in the Delaware Department of Health and Social Services. He will describe what his experience has been like from the time he landed in America at 5 years of age to the time he connected with the LGBTQ community, which played a pivotal role in shaping him into who he is today. His topic is To Be Alive Today. Please welcome Ru Chen.
Well, thank you, Erica, so much for the introduction. Hopefully you guys can hear me pretty well. And I believe my slide presentations will be managed by either Glenn or Emily today. So thank you guys as well for just clicking through my slides. Appreciate it. So my story is actually trailing off from Shen Hong's story, where he mentioned that his story is more personal. Well, I'm about to take that to a whole new level. My story is even more personal, and I'm trusting that experience with you guys here today. So hello, everyone. This will be my first time speaking to a group about my experience as an Asian American. I'd like to first thank everyone for taking interest in this topic and being here today, ready to absorb the information that's about to be shared. So let's start by looking at my baby pictures. Next slide, please. So I was born in a small town within the Henan province of China, where I popped into existence. During this era, the one-child policy was in effect, which means that each family was only allowed to have one child. More than that would have led to heavy fines. I was the second-born child in my family. During my first few years, I only remember the warmth, the love, and the tender care from my grandmother. My parents immigrated to the United States soon after I was born, so I couldn't recall many memories of them during my early years in China. When I turned 5 years old, my parents' friend told me that she was taking me to America to be with my family. But at the time, I didn't really know or trust anyone else besides my grandmother, and did not understand why my grandmother could not come with me. I recall crying nonstop on the plane, crying every time my grandmother would call me on the phone. I'd ask her, "Why didn't you come with me? Why did you leave me alone here?" In the eyes of the public, it looked like a normal Chinese family, but it felt so foreign to me when I first landed here. Not just the place, but the people too. I had to adapt to various things here, the people, the language, the culture. It was rough for me the first few years, but as I caught on to the English language, making friends became much easier. Gradually, without even noticing, English became my primary language. Next slide, please. Now I'd like to tell you more about the background of my parents. As a side note, understanding the background of a family is a big deal in some Asian families, as it shows what kind of upbringing their child has received. Sometimes it's about social status. My father works for a university as a research scientist, while my mother currently works alongside him. My mother had a variety of jobs, though. She started working as a server in a Chinese restaurant, then eventually became the manager of her own restaurants. After the restaurant business, she moved on to private accounting and worked for an international freight company in Georgia. She held on to this job for a few years before transferring into a job at the campus with my father. My father has a good heart with good intentions, but can be quite stubborn and hot-tempered sometimes. My mother has a kind heart and tries so well to keep the peace within my family, but she would often side with my father during times of conflict. My grandpa believed in beating his kids to teach them a lesson, and so my dad also believed in this parenting method. He was physically aggressive with my brother, but not as fierce with me, since I'm the youngest of his two children. but also because of another reason. Next slide, please. Not only was I placed into the Asian minority the moment I landed in this country, but I eventually discovered that I fit into another minority. Some of you may not know this, but I am transgender. I was born female and then legally, socially, and physically transitioned into male in my early 20s. Next slide, please. After my first year of college, I decided to leave my home in Georgia to pursue my own path of self-discovery and independence. I felt that staying behind would have prevented me from evolving into my authentic self. I did not tell my family where I was going and did not keep in touch with them for a few years after I moved to Delaware. I needed time to adapt to a new environment, to learn about myself, and to accept myself unconditionally. There were many questions I had that only I could answer, and to do that, I needed space and time to think. I struggled with toxic masculinity for a couple years, where I never felt like I was masculine enough, especially since I wasn't born male and could not go through the typical male puberty when the other guys were going through theirs during high school. Over time, I discovered that to truly accept myself and be happy with who I am, I needed to let go of all the negativity surrounding my race, my gender, and the judgments from other people about how I should look and act. After a few years, I decided to reconnect with my parents and come out as transgender. I knew that they wouldn't take it well, but I felt like they deserved to know the truth. My mother continued to reach out to me by phone after that reconnection, but then 2 years later, I decided to start my physical transition. That was when she stopped calling me on the phone. My voice changing from the hormone was too much for her to handle, so she decided to only text me from then on. Nowadays, I would occasionally send her audio and video messages, hoping that it would help her adapt. I'm still proud of the man that I am today and realize that by learning to be happy with or without my parents' approval, I have gained a mountain of self-esteem, confidence, and self-love. This powerful awareness is my highest achievement in life, and nobody can take that away from me. Next slide. To conclude my story, if you don't remember anything else, please know that being a minority is not the worst thing that can happen to you. Depending on which part of the world we are living in, the label of being a minority could change. We shouldn't be ashamed of who we are and how we live our lives. We all live on this planet, we're all human, and the most important aspect of humanity is not what we see, but what we understand about each other. Remember to pause for a moment and take a deep breath, listen to yourself, and find your courage to be alive today. Thank you guys so much for listening and for all of your support.
Thank you so much, Ruchin. Your sharing is not just beautiful, brave, but insightful and inspiring. We are grateful to have you here. Sharing with all of us and beyond the people that will look and listen to you later. Thank you for speaking for all those other students as your young people reaching out with this important message. Thank you. Now we are going to introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is Dr. Yvonne Oh-My-Young, and she was originally from Taipei, Taiwan, an accomplished scientist. She is currently a tenured associate professor of the Department of Mathematical Sciences at UD, and she will now tell us why it is important to know who you are.
Let me see, I will minimize the slide. So this is how big I go. Okay, so thank you very much for the invitation. I'm Yvonne Oh, and I actually put my Chinese name there. Okay, so I go by Yvonne because I think the J-U-N-G part is very challenging for a non-Chinese speaker to pronounce, especially my former advisor. So he could only meow, meow, meow whenever he tried to find me. That's why I decided, okay, I'm going to go by Yvonne. Okay, so I'm from Taiwan. Now I'm a tenured associate professor in the math department. So let me tell you about my background then, because the last two slides, I just want to share what I learned in the past 20 years. Okay, so I want to give you some background knowledge so it will make more sense. My father here, you see here. So this is my father. My mother was my big sister's children long time ago. Okay. So my father was from mainland China. He fled the communism. He moved to Taiwan when he was a teenager. And he made my mom. My mom was born and raised in Taiwan. My father was born and raised in Shanghai. from a very wealthy family. Just imagine. So he moved to Taiwan, stayed in the military, and the Taiwanese people actually, because of Chiang Kai-shek, was very hostile to people like my father. Okay, so actually, in front of me or my mother, they will actually refer to people like my father as Chinese pigs. So I grew up in this kind of environment, but I'm the number 4 in the family. But at a very early age, I think I have this personality of trying to look at the positive part, like what I can learn from this. Okay, because my father and my mother, they have very different cultural background, but they love each other. So I grew up in a family that my father would speak Mandarin with very heavy Cantonese accent because his first language was Cantonese. My mom would speak Mandarin with very heavy Taiwanese accent. But I was forced to speak perfect Mandarin in school because that's a standard. So I grew up like this and we didn't have much, but I was happy. So, like every time, even now about Christmas, I see the Christmas decoration, like the garland. Yes. So I start thinking about my childhood because to make the ends meet, my mom and my sister actually would take those things home and assemble them. For each piece, they will get some money. Yeah. So so now when I walk into the store, I actually start to remember, so I always remember where I came from. And very early on, I knew education is the only way to go. And I happen to be very good at studying. I love STEM. That's why I'm doing mathematics now. But early on, I grew up, but I tried to, so I learned how to pick my battle at very, very early age because I know I can only move forward. There's no time for me to actually stop because what other people say. Okay, so I came to USA, and these two pictures are very, very special. This is 1999. So this is soon after the big earthquake in Taiwan. So my father and mother came to USA to see me. So this is taken by my father in 1999. So this picture here was taken last week by my husband. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what happened 22 years as an Asian American. What is my experience? Okay, so this is just every year my husband's here. He's from Czech Republic. He's also a math professor. So he will make a picture like this, of everybody. So here you see very much where I come from. I have relatives here and I am friends. Okay, so what happened? Between 1999, the big events is I got my PhD, I did my postdoc, I got my first tenure track job in Florida. And then suddenly my longtime boyfriend died of lymphoma after I settled. Okay, so I was almost crushed at that time. But that's also when I found Christianity again and I got baptized. Okay, and I found a very good church, family, Bread of Life Church in Orlando, and I have friends there. And then what happened? And then I moved. I decided, okay. So at that time, one very important thing I wanted to remember was I was bullied. Yeah, doing my first job, but I was bullied by a senior female faculty originally from China. Okay, so that's how she tried to make sure my life was like hell. So I still remember, sometimes when I thought about her during those times, I even have this physical reaction to that. I keep telling you I look at positive part, but that almost crushed me. So I decided, okay, I'm not going to stay here, even though I will get tenure. So I moved to become a research scientist in Oak Ridge National Lab. And then I got married and I had my son here and we moved back to Delaware. Okay, so this is my son. He is 7.5 now, but this is when I was trying to show him the magazine to have a early start for him to read. Okay, and so many people ask me, what does it feel like, to be a female mathematician? So usually when I go to a conference, okay, so this is what it looks like. So this is the Mittag Lafler Center in Stockholm, right? I'm here, the shortest one always, yes. So from this picture I'm trying to say, think about it. Actually, I don't know how to describe it. Even though they look very white, they look very male, yes. But I think because of mathematics. So whenever I go there, I actually, what I'm trying to say is sometimes, like when I think about diversity, diversity depends on, for me personally, depends on the context. Okay. for me, there is diversity here in terms of mathematical ideas. So that's how I see things. So that's one example. And actually, yeah. So diversity can come in very different shapes. And okay, what other things also relevant? It's actually I was in this department of mathematical sciences in University of Delaware, right? That's also where I got my PhD a long time ago. So I was only bullied once, but actually bullied by a Hispanic male colleague. Okay, so that's all. But now I'm mature. I learned from all my experience, and the next two slides I want to share with you. So it's very from my perspective. Okay, so first thing is I think our experience shapes us, but it can never define who we really are because we are evolving. As long as I tell my son, as long as you are alive, you take different things inward. So you're not defined until the day you die. And okay, this is what I believe. And I also think that people with similar background does not necessarily think the same way. So when I came to this country at first, I thought this way, I expect this way. But then when it didn't happen, it caused confusion. So I want to share with you. And the third thing is about diversity. I think diversities of perspectives and ideas are very important. I think sometimes, of course, I also enjoy staying with people who think very likely, as I do. But I also enjoy actually talking to people who actually have different ideas from me, because that's how I learn. Because I think we can very easily pigeonhole into something. And then a lot of time, out of nicety, sometimes people don't tell you the opposite. So I try to make sure I have friends who actually will tell me, how they really feel about things. And you see, like, I hope by now you can see that I feel humans actually have more in common than they are different. In terms of the core values, I think in almost everybody I see, they value honesty, integrity, and empathy. I think there are some universal values here. So for me, maybe because I grew up in such a diverse environment, even in Taiwan, right? If you think about it, some people might think, well, it's very homogeneous, right? I mean, all Asian. But actually, the internal, like, there's a fight. For example, independence, unification. So here's about pick your battle. I remember when I was in university, I went to National Taiwan University. So people believe that's a cradle for people for independence, but not me, because my father's from mainland China. I'm in between. So I actually tried to debate with one of them, but then I decided I'm not going to do it anymore because my life is too short. If I cannot achieve any consensus, if there's no way I can change, I can kind of convey my idea to you, then usually I just stop because I have to pick my battle. So because of this, right, not everybody will want to see you happy. So I actually really cherish those who are nice to me. And actually I tell my son, I say, you really have to be kind and grateful to those who are very, very nice to you because they actually don't have to. So I think that's what I think is very important. And when I first came to this country, in Taiwan, I was used to, okay, everything will be just, given to me, all information, about the rules, responsibility, and where to go. When I came to this country, I think one thing I learned is you actually have to know about the rules. You learn about that will actually empower you because this will become a foundation. If anything concerns you, you actually have a reference point to actually describe what it is and what is violated. And so you can describe in a very calm way. So it took me a while to actually, be willing to actually put time into studying the rules, responsibilities, and things. Okay. And then another thing is help those in need however you can. I think because I got help by many, many others through my life. I believe in this. I think even though, like sometimes people dislike you, you cannot do anything. But I believe if enough of us is willing to help people whenever we can, it will scale up. That's what I believe. And do your responsibility. I've covered this already. And pick your battle again. Sorry, I think this is very important because actually pick your battle for me is not in my culture. The way I grew up, I was told that if anything's wrong, I have to think what I did wrong. That's just the way my mom educated me. But then I realized actually that's not always true. But you still don't have time. There are many things you want to do. I don't have time to actually fight every battle. So I pick my battle very wisely and make sure I have allies. That's how I live my life. The last one is I grew up in a culture that senior people usually is very happy to give people unsolicited advice and criticism. Now I'm older, so sometimes I might do the same. So I always remind myself, for the peace of the world, I think we have to remember criticism is useful only when it's constructive and only if you give a hint to the person about what he or she can do. Otherwise, I just hold my tongue until I can make it constructive. Okay, so I want to end my slides with, pursue your dreams. You don't need permission from anybody. Yeah. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, dear Yvonne. Again, insightful, needed, and appreciated. I wanted to remind everyone to please keep your questions. We are going to have a session of answers and the questions and answers right after our next speaker. And we will really appreciate that you think about those questions with respect, togetherness, and gentleness, because everyone sharing here is taking a leap to speak up, and everyone joining to listen also is here for the most important reason, to come together. So make sure that your questions are aligned to this event so we can get the most out of it. Our next speaker, it's a very interesting person. We have, let me just double check. Yeah, we had another speaker, and it's really important that we mention that because it's related to cultural concerns as well. Well, we don't have those speakers, and hopefully that is mentioned in another time. But we have a very insightful person right now. His name is John Phelan. His topic is winning one for our children. He considers himself just another person, another community member. He's very humble. He's very bright. He's very loving. He has served in many capacities to all our communities and our state. He has been a firefighter. He has been a coach. He has served in so many ways, and I would love to introduce you to him. So please, John Phelan, enlighten us with your topic, please. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yangfei Liu. My Chinese name is Lo Yunfei. The title of my presentation is Let's Win One for Our Children. Should one's worth be based on achievements alone? So I am a 1.5 generation Chinese American immigrant. Society sees me as Asian. I see myself as an American, but I don't quite fit in with either. My parents sees me as their son, and I have perspective with both Asian and American cultures. Growing up, I was the only Asian student in the Cape and Lopez School District. In fact, to help me with the English language, the school had to get a teacher, an English as second language teacher from Sussex Central High School. In Chinese gatherings, I always felt like an outsider, and I always remember their topic of the conversation to be their children's personal achievements. They always enter sport. They always also, when they talk about sports, they always value the individual sports, such as table tennis, swimming, and possibly track. And many parents resent other families' success because they wish their own children are successful like them. And I remember many of the topical conversations are, where your kid's going to go to school, is your kid a doctor, or how well they scored on the SATs. However, they are only human. Their parents, my parents, because all they want to do is what's best for their children. In fact, I remember very vividly is that my parents tell me to survive as an Asian American in this country, you must be much better than your peers because you will never be seen as an American. As I enter adulthood, I have noticed many healthy and successful Asians are depressed. In fact, the Asian Americans are some of the lowest help-seeking rate of any race or ethnic groups for mental health, with a percentage of 23.3. In fact, according to NAMI, having a sense of communal identity, connection, belonging, and family bonds is a strong predictor of resilience while facing life's challenges. Unfortunately, because of the interfamily resentment towards each other, we're not really able to build such a bond. Of course, there's also a dearth of sufficient data for the public to provide any better evidence on how to better address this issue. So what is a person's worth? Is it position in society? Is it your looks? Is it where you went to school? Is it how many zeros behind your bank account? Or the trophies you have earned? Or how many Lambos in your garage? Well, I tell my children rule number 2 is to be kind. In Chinese, it's translated as 品德. We should encourage community service. And if we want to really play into the stereotype of model citizen, we should foster altruism, community service, and genuine care for others. Because for somebody to be kind, we should defend the vulnerable and fight against oppression. And just for the record, rule number 1 is safety, since if you're not safe, you could get hurt and you won't be able to follow rule number 2. So in conclusion, we should definitely consider rule number 2 as a way to raise our children in our future, as we can build our community much better and much stronger and healthier. And here's the information provided for NAMI. And in fact, the Lieutenant Governor's Office has been a major advocate to promote mental health in the state of Delaware. And there can be many more information to support the mental health well-being specifically for the AAPI community with NAMI and the Lieutenant Governor's Office. Thank you so much.
The importance of diverse ideas, diverse talents in every area of social impact are beautiful and an asset to our communities. The Asian influence as every culture has perspective, beauty, opportunities, as well as a struggle to integrate into another culture. And we need all to open to listen. Every voice that is willing to speak so we can find a way together into a society that we all and each can build and look forward to. What I said this is because the reason why all this is happening is because we haven't listened to each other. So we have this opportunity to come together and let's talk. We have some voices speaking. We have similar interests. We have similar hurts, very specific cultural differences and concerns and gaps. So let's talk about them with all respect that we can and love for our speakers. So if we have questions, please type them out right now. And if not, I'm going to start with one question for our speakers. Let's see. We don't
Beth
have
has a question.
Oh, please tell me.
Okay, Beth asked, that she hopes that her son and his family will move to Sussex County after several years in, I believe, in Zhongshan, probably in mainland China. She would like to, she would like to have some positive experience in Delaware, and especially in Sussex County. So she was asking any suggestions for her son and his family.
Thanks, Tommy. Who would like to answer that question?
I mean, I could. I grew up in Lewis.
Okay.
I guess the question will be, what's going to be like a timeline to I guess relocate to Sussex County? Because we can.
My son has been looking for a job over the past couple of years, and of course the pandemic has put a big crunch in that because he wasn't able to get here. But hopefully within the next 6 months.
Okay. Because right now with the pandemic, definitely creates a lot of challenges. And then also the real estate values are going through the roof right now due to a multitude of reasons. But definitely there's a huge labor shortage down there. And there's a lot of, basically any industry are looking for employees to fill their positions right now. And we can definitely set up a time I can give you guys more in-depth information to kind of give you, to show you guys where you guys can look up more information.
Oh, great.
Hi, Beth. This is Anson. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I think I got it. I assume Zhongshan, I guess you mean Canton part of near Hong Kong, right?
Yes, in the Guangdong province.
Yes, my family is of the Zhongshan province there. I do speak Cantonese. I work at Delaware now. I guess that you will try to reach out to me. So, if you want to, since I do speak Cantonese, so I don't know if that's helpful or not. I also speak Mandarin just as well. So.
Oh, thank you very much. Yes, I will privately send you my email. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for inquiring and also for jumping into the questions. Now, I would like to do one question that is very important for the purpose of this forum, and that is to all our speakers. What do you want to see in Delaware to change, improve, modify, from your perspective and in representation of your community? What would be that one thing that you would like to see to make things different for you, your community and our communities? Who would like to start? We have Rui, we have Shunqing, we have Shang Hong, Yvonne, we have Yunfei. Who would like to participate and answer that one question? It's not simple, but that's why we're here. Dr. Ivan as well. What can we do? What needs to happen? This is the spot right now. Let's do this.
Okay. Okay. Who wants to go first? I could. So I'll mute myself first. So there are two-pronged approach to this. One is definitely the evidence-based research. We would need to get some, solid, consistent, and reliable information on some of the challenges and blind spots are. And then also kind of go back to the community involvement, which is still a very big challenge because we still do not have enough community engagement within the Asian community when it comes to, I guess, really voicing some of the challenges and breaking the silence in the AAPI community.
Thank you.
This is Su Chen. As you pointed out, there are so many things that we can do to really have positive impact for our community. And one thing I would like to do to see is really on the education side. And I feel that the current curriculum does not provide enough exposure of Asian AAPI histories to the students. And even though we do have wonderful Chinese schools in Hokkassan, I think it focused a lot more on the some of the histories about Taiwan, about China, and I feel that they need to have developed their own identity, not the generation 1.5, but it's actually generation 2, really see themselves as complete Asian Americans in the U.S.
Thank you. So that makes me think that we need to be starting thinking about how to integrate more professionals into education high levels, into government high levels. Think about what we can do to integrate all that awareness and needed knowledge for diversity needs. All right, so who else would like to share? Ru, I see you thinking hard.
I'll go real quick. So just coming from my background, it's funny, I actually used to play basketball at the Delaware Chinese Association. And what I found was, and Yunfei, I actually very much kind of resonated with one of the things that you said is, language is always a thing, right? And sometimes Asian Americans that don't speak Mandarin natively do feel like we're on the outside. And I actually found that when I used to go and participate in activities over at the Delaware Chinese Association, is I was actually kind of felt like I was treated as an outsider. So, I don't know what the solution is, but I feel like the Asian community, we've got several generations now. And so it's a very diverse community in a lot of different ways. And I think finding ways to have, different types of resources for the different types of people in the Asian American community in Delaware is something I would like to see.
Sounds like something needs to be built.
Mm-hmm. So I'd like to just include a few comments regarding that situation. So since Delaware is divided into three counties, and we have a couple thousand people in each county, I feel that maybe if there were separate support groups in smaller sizes within each county, it would really benefit everyone in the Asian American community to come together and find a safe place to meet up and talk and really open up about our own experiences, since we come from all walks of life. And regardless of whether you speak English fluently or Chinese fluently, we're all able to meet up, have like a centralized location within each county to do that. I think that would be very beneficial for everyone.
Thank you, Ru. If there is any other one of our speakers that would like to share, nothing else could be crazier than to share their heart. Believe me. Well, what you think? I just wanted to mention that after this session, we are going to have our closing moment. And after our closing moment, then we are going to have an open room for anybody that wants to stay, because what we have shared right here, what our speakers and our community members have shared, cannot be done by just one person, an official, or a few officials. It has to be done by community, by all of us integrating together. So whoever wishes to stay on, to see how we start this movement and this process and collaborate together to build the support system that is needed for our Asian community and beyond, are welcome to stay. So any other one of our speakers, Tommy, you're part of this. Please feel free to jump in. Dr. Ivan, your perspective is really, really important as well. Yvonne, you want to share anything, please do so now.
Well, I just hope the Asian Americans, they all can group together, be more vocal. I feel that we're not vocal enough. We often, like when I join many Chinese American organizations in Newcastle County, often I heard, oh, this is a non-political organization. But non-political, what is the definition of non-political? Right now, we saw on TV an elderly Asian woman got beat up in San Francisco. People got spit on in New York subway. We're still talking about non-political? But look at ourselves. When we talk about politics in Taiwan, in China, all of a sudden, everybody became a politician. But look at ourselves. We are living in the United States right now. This is our home. Whether we accept it or not, this is where we are right now. This is where we belong right now. If we still try to shy away from these public affairs, if we still think that doesn't matter, it doesn't happen to me, then I think the Asian Americans will be really, really in deep trouble. I also see a gap between like my generation and my children. Today, they are 100% feel they are Americans. So that's what we call cultural shock or whatever. We try to bring our heritage to them, but there's a impact between the two generations. While we try to hold on what we used to be brought up, is no longer valid or true here. So they have a lot of points, such as for the LGBTQ community about interracial marriage. To many of us, that's kind of like weird, like maybe even unacceptable. So we I think, even for among within ourselves, I think education is the key. We educate ourselves, we educate other groups, so to become a true diversity community. That's all I want to see, especially in Delaware.
Very important points. Yes, speak up more, create awareness, educate each other so we can decompose the stigmas and the bias that we have, that others might have, so we can get more understanding. I want to share a comment from Anson G. Thank you for sharing, everyone. Great reflections and points. I am glad that I find out this event. I have also moved from Middleton to Dover. Are there similar organizations, events in Kent County? Not that we know about, but if you want to be part of them, please stay on and we'll share more information with you. Yu Shufu, hi everyone. We just became partner with AAPI Vote Project. We are going to host both registration events. If you are interested, please reach out to me. Thank you. Yes, voting is very important, as any involvement. I think we are close to our time for our event. So we are going to introduce our next speaker, which is a very important person in our state. Our closer tonight is County Executive Matt Mayer. County Executive Matt Mayer, since taking office in 2017, has led with urgency, efficiency, innovation, but most important, with respect for diversity in leadership. From being a teacher, a diplomat, a lawyer, and now an elected official, his compromise to look for and bring urgent solutions to urgent issues has been what characterizes him as an asset to serve our community's humbleness and innovation. Thank you for being and joining us today. Newcastle County Executive, Matt Mayer, please take on.
Thank you so much, Erica. Rui, I think it was Yvonne, Lou, all of the speakers. I was only here for part of the session, but it's really impressive, the group that has come together today. I particularly, again, want to shout out Erica. Can we just give her a round of applause? The work that she does, inspiring better leadership and inspiring everyone in our community to do better, gets us as elected officials to do more and do better every single day. So thank you, Erica, for bringing us together. Erica mentioned that I was a public school teacher. I taught 6th and 7th grade math at Prestige Academy, a charter school in Wilmington. And I remember very distinctly, it was about 6 years ago, I had a student named Gabe. Gabe was from West Africa, from Ghana. He was fluent in Twi. He was 7th grader, fluent in Twi and fluent in English. I wanted him to and encouraged him to do things in his Twi language and teach others his Twi language. He would never want to do that. And he took me aside after class one day and said, please don't talk about me being from Ghana. He was embarrassed that he was from Ghana because students would make fun of him as a foreigner, as someone who didn't belong. His skin was too dark. And while that's in a different context, that's in a classroom, that's in Africa, not in Asia, I think we need to be honest that there are things like that, either macroaggressions or microaggressions happening in our community here in Newcastle County and across our state and actually across the country every single day. And we need to take an active role, all of us, Asian Americans, and all peoples, myself, across our community, to make sure, starting with children, but also for adults, we know that not only do we want to develop a tolerant community and a tolerant country, but we want it to be inclusive. As Erica talked about, it's particularly important to us in the county that our leadership is diverse at the highest levels. I just hired an Asian American to lead our economic development efforts. And by the way, I think there's an advantage in economic development to hiring someone who's first, second, third generation, or I think was mentioned 1.5 generation, which I haven't heard before, American, because you often retain incredible contacts to a foreign economy that can create linkages with us here in Delaware. There are programs out there that are really important. When I visited China on a delegation back in 2020, found a classroom of Chinese students that spoke English. And I linked up those Chinese students in Beijing with American students at, I believe it was Downs Elementary, who were in Chinese immersion. So you had Delawarean children speaking Chinese to Chinese students speaking English. I'm gonna text I'm gonna type the link for that chat if you're interested in seeing it. I would love to. I still retain some contacts in China. I know on this call, if we spark our creativity, we can come up with other exchanges like this, because what it does is it builds an appreciation of diversity and inclusion. Those students, regular Delaware, Newark kids, were so eager to engage with people from China because they had sort of embraced the language and the culture. Listen, I think Asian Americans to some extent are sort of a hidden minority. When you talk about race relations, when you talk about racism in our society, very rarely is Asian Americans the first group mentioned. But as has been mentioned here, Asian Americans in many ways are in danger. There are acts of violence every year against Asian Americans across our country. And we need to recognize that we here in Delaware can and should be a leader in addressing that through an inclusive community, inclusive leadership in the nonprofit, government, and private sectors. And also recognize that we have a history. I don't know how many of you know S.B. Wu, but we had the first Chinese American lieutenant governor. I believe it was the most senior Chinese American at the time in American history, the most experienced American of Chinese descent to attain the most senior level of state government. And so we need to recognize that history where necessary. I think S.B. Wu is the Honorable Mr. Wu is still around. Utilize him and understand that he's a role model for kids of tomorrow to know that no matter what language you speak, no matter what accent you have, no matter what kind of food you eat at home, your future is here in America and here in Delaware. And we'll want to work with you to develop programs and policies, pathways, tools of recruitment and training and retention of employees so that we can be successful long into the future. Thanks, Representative Baumbach. It was Downs Elementary. I don't remember if that was the one I said. or not. But it was an extraordinary engagement. Again, the YouTube link is in the chat. That's all I have. I really appreciate people coming together. The musical interlude was precious, Erica, and these exchanges need to continue. It's so important that we continue the dialogue. When we go silent and when we assume everything's fine and go back to our regular lives, in my experience, that's when bad things start to happen. So let's continue working together. Let's fight both the macroaggressions and the microaggressions to build a better Delaware. So thank you.
Thank you, County Executive. We appreciate you taking the time to be here with us and acknowledge not just our Haitian community, but like what needs to be done and continues to be an urgency to tackle. We appreciate your time, your empathy, and your compromise to keep working with us. And before moving into our group session, I also want to thank our other officials that spoke first, Lieutenant Governor Bethany, also Stephanie Hansen. We also have other officials here present in our groups. We have Representative Paul Wambach. Thank you for joining us and listening. And I want to give a huge shout out to Red Lion because she has pushed this since the beginning. She has been speaking about these concerns for our communities for so long. She is a role model. She is amazing. You better get to know her because she's so special in the Unitarian Universal Fellowship. She is an amazing asset that is always pushing for diversity, for recognizing others, for speaking out for human rights, for everything. And to me, she is a beautiful role model to follow. And she always pull my ears every time when I don't listen. So it's a great mentor as well. And I would love her. Glennie, you want to spot her, please? That would be great because I would love everybody to show her love and support. It has been a long way for her to speak up, to really be out here and say, we're doing this, people mobilize, do this and that. And she really needs to receive that love. So for everybody who mute or something, send love, but she needs to hear you. This is a big
Thank you, Guatlian. Yay, thank you.
Hey, Erica.
Thank you.
Hey, back at you, as they say, talk about role models. So she's one, she started it all. But as someone would tell me, don't deflect praise. Okay, accept it. So thank you. Thank you. Okay. So with that, I think we are at the end of this awesome session. And for those of you who have the energy and want to stay back, please do so. And if you cannot attend but would like to stay connected, leave us your email address or let us know some way how to contact you. Okay. So now we are gonna just take a little, pause and regroup as people who want to talk about. So we've been talking about asking questions and what can we do next, and perhaps let's try to kind of get some of the 2 or 3 things that we can actually commit to doing and put some actions behind them. Okay, let's not get too ambitious, just things that really can be are doable, and
yes,
build our confidence. Yeah,
thank you, Olan. John Finlow has prepared something. He said a name, but I won't say the name of the potential group, but it's actually a group focused on reflection, on improvement, and coming together, a free space where we can share what are the hurts and the opportunities for us to grow as community. So he's going to be modeling that today. And I also want to give a big thank you to all our speakers because it wasn't easy for them to jump in and speak. And we asked them to be vulnerable and they did it beautifully, which was really hard, culturally speaking. So a big shout out to all of them, our love and support, because we're going to keep needing you, speaking more, sharing, because the Asian community is not the only one that is fragmented. All our communities are fragmented. The American community, the African American, all communities are fragmented, and we need to come together because it's not a one culture issue. And each culture, we need to start talking about those differences and those needs. So thanks, everyone. We are staying here. Anybody willing to stay and keep this conversation, please do so. If you want to, there is any email where they can contact if anybody needs to leave, but they would like to be in touch. Please share that in the chat. Big hug to everybody. We love you. Thank you for joining us. And we count on you for our next steps.